This is part 2 of the online lecture to accompany Chapter 13 in your textbook. I highly recommend that you read Chapter 13 because there are many important ideas, theories, concepts, and examples that I simply don't have time to address during this lecture. You can stop, pause, and replay this lecture as often as you wish. Let's start talking a little bit about vocal delivery. Effective speakers need to learn to control their voices in order to enhance the impact of their message. And there are a couple of aspects of what's called vocal variety that you need to be aware of in order to best use your voice in a speech. The first thing you need to be aware of is your volume. Volume has to do with how loud or soft your voice is. Now, it's very, very rare that someone speaks too loudly in a public speech. Most of the time, people speak too softly. Basically, you need to be able to be heard in the room. Now, in our room, you probably don't have to speak all that loudly to be heard by everyone. However, if you're not used to speaking loud enough to be heard by a room full of people, you may be speaking too soft. And I think that's more than anything else just a matter of getting used to how loud you need to speak to be able to be heard. The second thing that you need to utilize is pitch. Pitch has to do with how high or how low your voice falls on the musical scale. People who tend to use only one or two pitches in their voice, so that's called monotone. And anybody who has ever had a teacher who just kind of drones on and on and on and doesn't really use all the different pitches in their voice knows how boring that is after a while. So you really want to go high up on the scale and low down on the scale. As you can see, I've raised my voice up high, but I can also drop it down low. Also, you need to consider rate, how fast or slow you're speaking. And as I said, most people speak between 125 to 150 words per minute. That's the norm. However, when you get very, very nervous in a speech, we have a tendency to speed up and start speaking very, very fast. That makes it difficult for us to understand you because it's outside of the realm of normal speaking rate. You need to know if that is something that you have a tendency to do. And when you practice, try to speak at a normal rate instead of speeding up. However, you can slow down for effect, that kind of thing. Now, pauses, unfortunately, when you're in the middle of a speech, sometimes the pause is because you've forgotten what you were going to say, you lost your place, that kind of thing. Those are not the kind of pauses I'm talking about. Pauses for effect, where you want to stop, just like I did right there, just to make a point or to let something you said sink in. Pauses can be very effective. The concept of vocal variety, the term vocal variety, means that you are combining how loud and soft you speak, where your voice is on the musical scale, how fast and slow you're speaking, and incorporating pauses. You're combining all those elements to make meaning. So you don't want to just do them because you think you need to change how loud or soft you are or how high or low you're speaking. You want to do them because you're emphasizing ideas and trying to get the idea across to your audience. So that's what that means by vocal variety. So you need to keep those things in mind. Now, there are a couple of other important factors you need to consider that go along with how you use your voice. The first one is pronunciation. Pronunciation means that you are saying the words correctly. That is something that tends to bother me. I'm not saying that to frighten you, but I mean, if you are going to use a word in a speech, you should, of course, know how to pronounce it. Now, there are some words that are generally mispronounced, such as the word nuclear. Many people say it nuclear. That is not how you say it. Make sure that you say words correctly. And certainly if you're going to use a word and you're not quite sure how to say it, please look it up in the dictionary. You can actually go to dictionary.com, type the word in, and click on a little button, and it will actually pronounce the word for you. So you really have no excuse to mispronounce words. Do not use a word in a speech that you do not know how to pronounce. Articulation is different than pronunciation. It is saying the words clearly and crisply so that we can all understand them. You're trying to make yourself understood by your entire audience. So if you have a mush mouth and only your mom can understand you, you're not going to get your ideas over very well. So make sure that you practice saying the words crisply and clearly so that we can all understand them. Now finally, dialect. Dialect has to do not just with your accent, because you may have an accent, maybe English is your second language and you learn to speak it, and so you have an accent that goes along with where you were born and the original language that you grew up with, but also how you use grammar. I do not expect you to drop an accent or a dialect because I want you to speak a particular way. I think the way you speak is part of who you are, and you need to embrace that. But you just need to be aware that it may cause you to have to work a little bit harder to be understood, particularly if you have a very, very strong accent because English is not your first language. Just something to be aware of. That concludes part 2 of chapter 13. Please close this window and open part 3.